Before we get to the show proper, I'd like to say that originally this was written in 2013/2014-ish. So, be warned, some things may be outdated. I try to change anything that is really time sensitive. With all that said, on with the show. Hello and welcome to Binging on Comics. Today we're going to be checking out probably my personal favorite Thor story in a very long time. No, not that Thor. That's Jane Foster with The Power of Thor. Fine, for hipsters, this would be when Odin's son was Thor, and Jason Aaron didn't forget how to write a solidly intriguing mystery and character-driven narrative. And now that I have 20 thumbs down for pointing that out, we're going to be looking at Thor, Godbutcher, and Godbomb, which spanned the first 11 issues of the Marvel Now, not the all-new Now, mind you, but the old and hip cool one from 2011, Thor, God of Thunder book by Jason Aaron. Let's roll the opener and let's get thunderstruck. No, that'd be too cliched. How about the immigrant song? No. God of Thunder? No. Ride the Lightning. Ooh, no. No, I know exactly what we're gonna use. Roll it.
Cross the rainbow bridge of Asgard, where the booming heavens roar. You'll behold in breathless wonder the God of Thunder, mighty Thor.
For those who just want to know if they'll like this book, I'll give a quick spoiler-light summary of the story and whether or not it's worth reading. If you've been following my Facebook page in the past several years, then you'd know that I think this book is totally worth having, at least in trade form. The plot is simply phenomenal, following Thor through 3 points in his life. Back when he was the Viking god, battling alongside the Vikings in the late 9th century, his present state with the Avengers, and millions of years in the future when he is the last Asgardian and Allfather. What earth-shatteringly awesome story would need to stretch such a time frame? Well, someone is killing all the gods, and I mean all of them. He's taking out mountainous behemoths. He's taking out hippie gods. This person is killing them all and draining their blood. But really, you need to read this to get the best bits and the gravity of the situation fully. And what's even better is that in the Godbomb, all 3 eras are brought together to take on Gorr the Godbutcher. Spoiler, technically, sorry. Like I said, it was light spoiler, and knowing the Godbutcher's name doesn't actually phase the story in any way, or knowing that all the eras are brought together by the end, though you could infer why. So if you just want to know if it's worth reading, then oh god, yes. It's the best story in Marvel Now, though I'll admit that I'm still rummaging through that slowly. And yes, even still today I'm rummaging through that. So with that said, let's talk talent. Jason Aaron penned this, and it wasn't until I was looking over his bibliography that I realized that this wasn't the first time he'd written something that I'd been floored by. Back before I started looking at the writers' names, I read Scalped, which was undeniably amazing, and Punisher Max is the quintessential Punisher story for me. Don't worry, sooner or later, one of these shows will deal with the Max imprint. So Jason Aaron has been writing some excellent comics for DC, Vertigo, Marvel, and even on the indie scene. He even wrote a Friday the 13th comic that I think I didn't like, but hey, it wasn't an official review, so it doesn't count. Then there is the illustrator, Esad Ribic. The Croatian artist has been active in the comic scene since the 90s, and has worked on things like The Submariner, The Depths, and the 2004 Loki miniseries. That art, added with such spectacular coloring though, is what pops the art in this book to an 11, with possibly my favorite being Dean White, who started off the book as a colorist. They work so brilliantly together, giving this depth to the world, a greatness to the entire journey, and it's just so freaking good. By the way, I would totally give my left arm to get a poster of this frame on screen, a full poster. This is definitely one of my favorite panels ever in any comic book, just because it is so grand and huge, and it just adds to what Thor as a concept really can bring to the table. Though in issue 6, the origin of Gorr the Godbutcher was done by Butch Goose, which also worked really well. Now, let's actually take a look at the sparse characters in this. Now, when I said sparse, I mean I'm only covering 4 characters, 3 of which are the same person just at different intervals. Why? Well, simply because the point of this book isn't to give Thor a cadre of supporting characters. I mean, yeah, Iron Man does show up once or so, but really, this is about Thor and Gorr. I wrote this years ago, and it just took me that long to realize that Gorr and Thor rhyme. Wow. Now, I know for new Binging on Comic fans, I don't talk about the characters at all that much, but I'm kicking it old school today. Here's the ultimate decision. Do I talk about Thor first, or do I talk about his enemy, Gore? I'll talk about Thor first since I don't think I can really talk about Gore without making sure that there's a spoiler skip somewhere in there. As I brought up, we get to follow the three dominant eras of Thor: Thor the Viking, Thor the Avenger, and Allfather Thor, for easy classification. Viking Thor is very brash and much more the young, arrogant, stubborn, bull-headed, temperamental son of a Freya that can't lift Mjolnir yet. Thor the Avenger is much more experienced than his past, wielding the Uru hammer and actually being the one called out by Gore comparatively. Then you get old, weary, less the Asgardian, one-eyed Thor that really has been now drained completely of just existence after thousands of years of daily combat. Yes, there's a bit of a struggle with reading the parts of Thor the Avenger. It's just that he's given a more reactive role while doing research and seeing how many other gods have fallen early on, that it gets a smidge repetitive, though the art does make up for that. Indeed, unlike a lot of other favorite stories of mine, this isn't so much a character development tale as it is a tale of, well, I'll get to that in presentation and analysis. Now, let's talk about Gore. I am giving a massive spoiler warning right now. Gore the Godbutcher is a tragic character. We see him throughout the three time frames, killing gods, and eventually coming across Thor and toying with them until the end of time. The truest point, and here's where the spoiler comes in, he becomes a god unto himself with the powers he wields, becoming the god of hypocrisy in GODBOMB, where he recreates his lost loved ones who are all so appalled by him that they betray him to Thor. Plus, the dude tortures Volstagg. That's just cruel. Plus side, Volstagg loses some weight by the end of the torture, so can't be all bad. Yes, I know that was a horrible joke. Moving on, let's talk about presentation. Let's start with me gushing about the art. If you couldn't tell by my bit of a squee earlier with the talent, I really like the art for this storyline. In fact, let's hop back over to the one panel that I won as a full poster. As you can see, the scale of this is just freaking huge. You get the depth of field that really just ramps up how huge everything is. This is basically just an epic neo-Frank Frazzetti style that ultimately leads to an unstoppable amalgam artist, Asad Ribic, and colorist Ives Forcina and Dean White that just bring it to a top tier level. And that's just one panel. The whole page looks like this. So the art is phenomenal, be it the landscapes, the combat sequences, the character models, and it interlocks so well with the writing and story that it's all just a perfect storm about it. As for presenting the tale in three separate storylines throughout all the books, I think it works so much better than if they did it like one issue this period, one issue that, because you get three great storylines playing out until later, then they start to fuse into each other, because you get three great storylines playing out until later when they start to fuse, because Gore is readying for his final solution, a god bomb to wipe out all the gods ever. But yeah, so it's definitely readable. And it's within telling that three-part tale out of all of Thor's history. You see Thor when he's his arrogant self, you see Thor in his Avenger self, you see him at the end of his rope, but you see how Gore changes throughout the time. So that way, when it's revealed that he's got this super epic power that allows him to kill gods, and that he's unto himself become a god, the tragedy of the character isn't lost. So, I guess I already did this before, but finally, we are at the verdict. So, with how it's laid out and presented, this entire storyline, which spans the first 11 issues of Thor, God of Thunder, gets a solid buy it. Buy it means that it is totally worth the buy. And I would actually one-up and say it is worth the collection because Jason Aaron does a phenomenal job on the Thor series, and each single issue has a phenomenal cover that's worth having on a shelf just so you can look at. But that is all for today. If you agree or disagree with me, please let me know in the comments below. Also in the comments, while you're telling me how wrong I am, please let me know what other comic I should cover for Binging on Comics. Don't forget to like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and please look at our Patreon. The Patreon also covers A Comic a Day, my daily comic review show, and ComicSins, the CinemaSins knockoff for comic readers. Currently, it is on hiatus though because of low numbers. I know, it's sad. But now, if you'll excuse me, I need to go see what else I've missed out on while the Avengers comic was annoying me. Toodle pip. And as always, stay golden, Inklings.
Wonder, the God of Thunder.